Pooh Shiesty is now at the center of a major federal case after being accused of kidnapping and robbing GucciMane.
Who are charged and arrested include Lontrell Williams Jr., also known as Pooh Shiesty.
There are already rumors flying that GucciMane may have cooperated, and people immediately started questioning his role. Then Gucci addressed the situation himself.
It's the only thing I believe in. That's it. Keeping it discreet. It's my only rule.
So what really happened here? Let's walk through it carefully. On April 2nd, 2026, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas publicly laid out the case and described what prosecutors say happened inside a Dallas music studio on January 10th, 2026.
I'm Ryan Rabel, I'm the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Texas. Thank you for coming.
According to federal authorities, 9 men, including 2 rappers with major name recognition, were charged in connection with kidnapping and conspiracy to commit kidnapping.
This week, 9 individuals, including well-known musical artists, kidnapped and robbed at gunpoint numerous victims at a music studio in Dallas, Texas.
One of the alleged victims was Radrick Davis, better known as GucciMane, the same artist who signed Pooh Shiesty, supported him through his legal troubles, and publicly welcomed him home after his release.
8 of the 9 were arrested yesterday in Dallas, Memphis, and Nashville. These individuals who are charged and arrested include Lontrell Williams Jr., also known as Pooh Shiesty.
The names tied to the case include Pooh Shiesty, Big 30, and even Pooh's own father. That same day, Gucci went live on Instagram. What stood out was not some detailed explanation of the incident, but what he chose not to say. He made it clear that he was not cooperating with the federal government or helping prosecutors build their case against Pooh and the other defendants.
Yeah, I ain't gonna tell nobody, not even the police. I don't believe in nothing. The only thing I believe in is don't tell the police. It's the only thing I believe in. That's it. Keeping it discreet. It's my only rule. Anything goes on, anyway.
He gave no step-by-step version of what happened inside the studio. He did not go into detail about the weapon that was allegedly pointed at him. He did not confirm the paperwork he was supposedly forced to sign. He did not address the stolen jewelry, the Rolex watches, or any of the property that prosecutors say was taken. He stayed quiet on all of that. And in the eyes of many people watching, that silence carried a message of its own. To understand why that mattered, you have to look at the history between them. Gucci had rebuilt his life and career after his own federal sentence. He brought 1017 back together, found new talent, and put serious faith in Pooh Shiesty early. He signed him before the fame fully exploded, pushed his music hard, and stood behind him while he was in prison. Then, according to federal prosecutors, less than 3 months after Pooh came home, he allegedly confronted Gucci in a Dallas studio with an AK-style pistol and forced him to sign contract papers at gunpoint. So when Gucci later said publicly that he was not cooperating, many people interpreted that as more than just protecting himself from snitch accusations. It looked like he was sending a message. No matter what happened, he was not going to be the one helping send Pooh away. That is why the timing of Gucci's response mattered too. He didn't wait a week. He didn't issue a polished written statement. He jumped on Instagram Live on April 2nd, 2026, the same day the Department of Justice announced the charges. That made it feel immediate, emotional, and deliberate. At that point, one of the 9 defendants, Terrence Rogers, had not even been arrested yet. Federal authorities said one person was still outstanding and that publicizing the case could help locate him. So the investigation was already moving aggressively with or without victim participation. But to understand how things got this far, you have to go back to when Gucci and Pooh were solid. When GucciMane signed Pooh Shiesty to 1017 Records in 2020, he welcomed him in a flashy way, gifting him a customized slime green Trackhawk on 1017 rims. That move showed how seriously Gucci took the signing. He wasn't treating Pooh like a temporary opportunity. He was treating him like a future star. Gucci heard the energy in Pooh early and moved quickly. No drawn-out industry drama, no waiting around. He saw something in the sound and made the call. Then, Back in Blood, featuring Lil Durk, took off in late 2020 and turned into a huge national hit. The record blew up, and it proved Gucci had bet on the right artist. From there, Gucci stayed involved in the rollout. He helped build the machine around Pooh. Then Shiesty Season dropped on February 5th, 2021 under 1017 and Atlantic. Gucci even appeared on the track Ugly. The project performed well and eventually reached platinum status. Later, when Pooh spoke in an XXL interview after getting released, he talked about how much Gucci's own comeback story had impacted him mentally.
the way Gucci came home and like, that motivated me too because like, you know, I took notes from there, like how he switched it up, how he toned up.
He wasn't only talking about Gucci's music. He was talking about how Gucci returned from prison focused, disciplined, and more mature in the way he moved.
You know, got fit, got his mind healthy, like took notes in that every way, so they motivated me to move how I move.
Pooh explained that Gucci had spoken to him directly and gave him real advice that stayed with him.
Another thing he told me too was like, Shiesty, you 20 years old going to go see what I saw at 35 years old.
The message was simple. Gucci told him he had a head start. Gucci said he had learned certain lessons later in life, while Pooh had the chance to understand them much earlier. That kind of conversation sounds less like label politics and more like genuine mentorship, and Gucci kept showing that loyalty while Pooh was locked up. From the 2022 sentencing through the 2025 early release, Gucci continued keeping Pooh's name alive. Then in October 2024, Gucci reportedly reviewed the numbers across his roster and reduced the label drastically, keeping only 2 names, Pooh Shiesty and Fujiano. Everybody else got cut. Pooh stayed. When Pooh came home from federal custody in October 2025, Gucci publicly welcomed him back, calling him a real one. Not long after, Gucci made it clear Pooh was still with 1017 and that he was looking forward to working with him again. In December 2025, Pooh released FDEO under the 1017 banner. On the surface, everything still looked intact. That context matters because 1017 had already taken serious losses over the years, deaths, legal problems, and roster setbacks. Gucci had lost artists, lost momentum, and had already trimmed the label way down. Holding Pooh down through prison and keeping him in position meant Gucci was still betting on him as a major part of the future. That is what makes the alleged betrayal hit so hard, because behind the scenes, something appears to have been building, and according to people analyzing the situation, much of it may have come down to the contract. Pooh's original deal had been signed in 2020, before his biggest success, before the platinum records, before his market value exploded. And unlike some sports contracts, music contracts do not simply run out while an artist is incarcerated if required deliverables are still owed.
The thing with music contracts, it's usually staggered based on deliverables in terms of albums.
That is the key issue. If an artist still owes albums or projects, prison time does not automatically wipe away those obligations. So when Pooh came home in October 2025, he was still tied to 1017 under the original deal structure. But by that point, his value had changed dramatically. Back in Blood had become massive. His brand was bigger. His name held more weight. From his side, it would make sense to want new terms. Reports suggested that both sides entered discussions about renegotiating, royalties, advances, control, ownership, budget, all of it. At first, those talks reportedly stayed professional. But by late 2025, they had stalled. The gap between what Pooh believed he deserved and what the old deal said he was entitled to had become too wide. There was also another layer to the tension, the emotional side of incarceration. Even if public support stayed visible, the feeling of being stuck in prison while business continues around you can create resentment fast.
So yeah, you get locked up. Essentially, the contract gets paused.
Not necessarily open hatred, not immediate war, but a slow-building frustration, the kind that grows in silence over time. Then there was speculation about outside influence. Academics floated the possibility that Yo Gotti may have been part of the background conversation. And in Pooh's XXL comments after release, he mentioned names of people who had reached out to him while he was locked up. Interview 12. Whether or not that ultimately mattered, one fact remained. Gucci controlled the contract, and Pooh could not just walk away from it. That appears to be a major reason the January 10th meeting ever happened. By then, Pooh was already building momentum again. His post-release buzz was strong. FDEO had traction. The streets were paying attention. Every stream, every reaction, every sign of demand only increased the pressure. If the renegotiation wasn't moving, the frustration had even more room to grow. The Dallas location also mattered. According to the complaint, the meeting took place at a studio in Dallas, where Pooh was based during home confinement. So what may have looked like a neutral meeting point was, in reality, his territory. Gucci and his people traveled there expecting a business conversation. What prosecutors say happened instead was something much darker. The 3 men who walked into that Dallas studio on January 10, 2026, believed they were heading into contract discussions. But federal authorities described the event as a planned armed takeover.
He probably gets out, goes to the halfway house, And he has some resentment for 1017.
According to the government, this was not some argument that spiraled out of control in the moment. Prosecutors say it involved 8 co-conspirators and had been organized in advance.
Yo Gotti reached out. Gucci, of course, non-tripping star leader.
Authorities say one victim had a gun pointed at him and hesitated before signing paperwork. That hesitation allegedly caused tension during the encounter, but the signature was ultimately forced under duress. While that was happening, other members of the group were allegedly carrying out their own roles.
Williams Jr. and 8 co-conspirators, several of whom traveled from Memphis, Tennessee, executed a coordinated armed take.
One of the other victims was reportedly attacked from behind and nearly choked unconscious. Federal documents included photographs of marks on the victim's neck and wrist.
As alleged, Williams Jr. produced an AK-style pistol and forced one of the victims to sign a release from the recording contract at gunpoint.
Big 30, according to the complaint, allegedly positioned himself at the doorway to keep anyone from escaping while the confrontation unfolded. Prosecutors also alleged that Pooh's father played a direct role, helping rent vehicles for the trip from Memphis to Dallas and even assisting with contract-related paperwork before the meeting. That is what makes this case look, from the government's perspective, like a coordinated family-led operation rather than some random blowout. And then, there was the biggest problem of all for Pooh, his legal status at the time. He was still under supervised release from his previous federal firearms case.
The remaining conspirators displayed firearms and robbed the other victims of Rolex watches, jewelry, cash, and other high-value items.
That means the rules were simple. No new crimes and no firearms. Prosecutors say he was wearing an ankle monitor during the incident. That detail is devastating. Because if the allegations are true, the same device that was supposed to help track compliance instead placed him right at the crime scene during the exact window prosecutors say the crimes occurred.
Defendant Wright barricaded the studio door with his body to prevent the victims from escaping.
That ankle monitor became one of the strongest pieces of evidence in the entire case. And the evidence reportedly didn't stop there. Prosecutors say they also had cell phone records, license plate reader data, rental car records linked to Pooh's father, surveillance footage from the studio, surveillance from a nearby office supply store where paperwork was allegedly printed, and hotel footage tied to multiple defendants. Investigators also reportedly recovered fingerprints from the crime scene. Then came one of the most reckless parts.
Electronic monitoring data placing Williams Jr. at the offense location, which would put him in violation of his home detention conditions.
According to prosecutors, some members of the group allegedly posted on social media shortly after the robbery, showing off watches and jewelry that appeared to match the items reported stolen. That kind of behavior only made the government's job easier.
They basically said the nigga had the ankle monitor on at the robbery.
Bus records then allegedly showed several defendants traveling from Dallas back to Memphis the next morning. Even what may have seemed like a lower profile travel choice ended up creating another paper trail. The FBI did not treat this like a small local case. The investigation involved coordination between multiple offices and agencies, including Dallas, Memphis, Nashville, local police, and several U.S. attorneys' offices. That level of coordination says a lot about how seriously the case was being handled. From the government's point of view, the chain of evidence was already strong. Ankle monitor data, bus records, surveillance, vehicle rentals, fingerprints, and social media posts. So when Gucci went public saying he was not cooperating, it may have had cultural significance, but it likely did very little to weaken the actual prosecution. The bigger question then becomes, what does all of this mean now? When the U.S. Attorney addressed the media on April 2nd, 2026, the message was blunt.
Social media posts by defendants displaying what appears to be stolen property just in the days following the offense.
Federal authorities made clear they viewed this as an extremely serious violent crime, and the consequences reflect that. All 9 defendants are facing federal kidnapping-related charges, including conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Prosecutors said those charges carry potential penalties as high as life imprisonment. For Pooh, the situation becomes even more dangerous because of his prior conviction, and the fact that these new allegations came while he was still under supervised release. That prior record is not some small footnote. It has the potential to make an already severe situation much worse when sentencing is considered.
Yo, niggas could never stop nigging, huh? Soon as they get out of the studio, They went to social media to post the proof that they did do the robbery.
For Gucci, the fallout is different, but still huge. According to the complaint, he was one of the victims. Prosecutors say he was threatened with a gun, forced to sign paperwork, and watched his people get assaulted and robbed. Yet publicly, he refused to help the government. Legal analysts have pointed out that a case this heavily documented usually does not depend on victim testimony anyway. If the government truly has all the evidence it says it has, the GPS data, fingerprints, social media, rentals, video, bus records, then Gucci's silence may not save anybody. But culturally, his refusal still meant something. Before the formal charges were even announced, people like Adam22 were already talking about the image problem this situation created.